Let me say something quietly first. Not aggressively. Not to provoke. Just honestly. Most women don't wake up on their 32nd birthday and suddenly panic. That's not how it happens. The panic doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks in slowly, through silence, through comparison, through moments they never talk about. And that's why most people never see it, because women don't admit panic. They rename it. They call it clarity. They call it growth. They call it knowing what they want now. But underneath those words, something else is happening. And if you've ever felt confused by the sudden shift, if you've ever noticed how energy changes around that age, if you've ever thought, something feels different, but I can't explain it, you're not imagining things. Let's talk about it. When a woman is 25, the world feels wide. Time feels generous. Options feel endless. Mistakes feel reversible. If something doesn't work out, it's fine. There's always more time, more people, more chances. A bad relationship is just a lesson. A breakup is just part of the journey. Another year passes and nothing feels urgent. At 27, that feeling is still there. Maybe slightly quieter, but still present. At 29, something subtle begins to shift. Not panic, just awareness. Friends start getting engaged, then married, then pregnant. Not all at once, just enough to notice. And at first, it doesn't sting. It feels distant, like someone else's timeline. She tells herself, I'm different, I'm focused, I'm building something. And that's true. But then she turns 31, and the room gets quieter. The same friends who used to be available anytime aren't anymore. Group chats change, conversations shift. There's less spontaneity, more schedules, more responsibilities. And something else changes too, the attention. At 24, attention was constant, effortless, almost annoying. At 32, it's still there, but it's different. Less playful, more transactional, less curious, more cautious. She notices men hesitate more, ask more questions, move slower. Some disappear faster. Not because she's unattractive, but because the context has changed. People aren't dating for fun anymore. They're dating with consequences. And that's when the quiet panic begins. Not loud panic, internal panic. The kind you don't post about, the kind you don't say out loud, the kind you feel at night, alone, when no one is watching. Here's the part no one explains. Women are taught from a young age that time is on their side. You're young. You have plenty of time. Don't rush. Don't settle. Those messages are comforting until they stop being true. The shift doesn't happen at 32 because of biology alone. It happens because the illusion breaks. For the first time, time doesn't feel infinite. It feels directional. And direction creates pressure, because now choices feel heavier. A date isn't just a date, it's a potential future, or a dead end. A relationship isn't just chemistry, it's a risk assessment. And that weight is exhausting. So women do what humans always do when pressure rises. They adapt. But adaptation doesn't always look honest. Sometimes it looks strategic. This is where the confusion starts for men. One year, she's relaxed, non-committal, exploratory. The next year, she's serious, focused, intentional. She says she's changed, and in some ways, she has, but not in the way she thinks. Because panic doesn't make people more honest. It makes them more controlled, more careful with words, more selective with stories, more aware of optics. She doesn't say, I'm scared I waited too long. She says, I finally know what I deserve. She doesn't say, I'm afraid of ending alone. She says, I'm no longer tolerating nonsense. She doesn't say, I feel the window closing. She says, I'm ready for something real. And those statements sound strong. They sound confident. But confidence doesn't usually arrive with urgency. Peace doesn't rush. Panic does. Here's the part almost no one wants to hear. The panic isn't just about relationships. It's about identity. At 22, identity is flexible. You're becoming. At 32, identity feels more fixed. You are who you are. And that realization hits hard, because certain dreams quietly expire. Not loudly, not dramatically. They just stop being realistic. The dream of endless exploration, the dream of total freedom, the dream of figuring it out later. Later arrives, and it asks for answers. Now, let's talk about why women don't admit this. It's not because they're dishonest. It's because admission feels like failure. Women are taught to be empowered, self-directed, in control. Admitting panic feels like admitting weakness. It feels like saying, maybe I miscalculated, and that's terrifying. So instead, the story gets rewritten. Past choices become necessary. Missed timelines become intentional. And the urgency gets reframed as maturity. This isn't manipulation, it's protection. The mind protecting the ego, the heart protecting itself from regret. Because regret is heavy, and once it's named, it doesn't leave. Let me tell you a story. There's a woman named Sarah. Not her real name, but you've met her. Everyone has. Sarah was vibrant at 26, confident, magnetic. She dated freely, left quickly, never stayed where she wasn't excited. She believed love should feel effortless. At 30, she was still smiling, still independent, still unbothered. Or so it seemed. At 32, something changed, not externally, internally. She started feeling anxious after dates that went well. She replayed conversations, analyzed texts. She began asking herself questions she never asked before. Is this going somewhere? Is he serious? Am I wasting time? She didn't say this out loud. She told her friends she was more intentional now. But late at night, she felt something else. Fear. Not of commitment. Fear of alignment. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of choosing late. Fear of realizing too late that some doors don't reopen. Here's the part no one likes. Panic doesn't make people kinder. It makes them sharper, more demanding, less patient, more critical. Not because they want to hurt others, because they're scared. And fear shortens tempers. It reduces tolerance. It turns minor flaws into deal breakers, not because the flaws are huge, but because time feels small. This is why dating around 32 feels different. The stakes feel higher. The margins feel thinner. People aren't just looking for connection. They're looking for certainty, and certainty is rare. So frustration grows, and frustration often disguises itself as standards. Now, let's be clear. Not all women panic at 32, but many do, quietly, privately, behind composed faces and confident words. And they don't admit it because society doesn't give them permission to grieve time. Men are allowed to say, I feel behind. Women are expected to say, I'm exactly where I should be, even when they're not. The saddest part, the panic isn't just about not having a partner. It's about not being chosen with enthusiasm. There's a difference between being wanted and being timed, between being desired and being appropriate. And many women sense that difference. They feel when attraction has shifted into evaluation, when romance has turned into logistics. And that realization hurts more than being single. Here's something rarely said. At 32, women don't panic because they lack options. They panic because options feel conditional. The terms change, the room changes, the energy changes, and no one prepares them for that. So, what happens next? Some women slow down, reflect, heal. Others rush. They tighten timelines, accelerate commitment, push conversations forward faster than connection naturally grows. Again, not maliciously, urgently, because panic doesn't trust time. If you're a man watching this, here's the part you need to hear. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding. When you feel pressure, when timelines accelerate, when patience disappears, that energy didn't start with you. You walked into the middle of a story already unfolding. And your job isn't to rescue, or to comply, or to run. Your job is clarity. because panic plus confusion creates resentment on both sides.